There we go. Scotty.
What's up, Seb Rusk? What's going on?
Yo. Last time I talked to you, I was walking down the beach.
That's right. So let me show you hit the record button here. Yep, we're good there. All right. So, guys, our next special rock star out there is the host of the Seb Rusk Show on SocialBuzzONAIR. Sebastian is a digital storyteller and the founder of the podcast LaunchLab.com. So for those of you that are looking to start a podcast, he's a guy to go to. It's a full-service podcast launch solution to help entrepreneurs and marketers start their own podcast and show. The Seb Rusk Show is a podcast designed to share the story of authors, entrepreneurs, speakers, business owners, and world changers. And without further ado, our good buddy Sebastian Rusk, man. Live from Miami, right?
Scotty Carson. That's right. A very cold and rainy Miami.
I saw that. You got iguanas dropping out of the trees.
Yeah. And they're cooking them and making iguana tacos.
Yum. Tastes like chicken.
Yeah, they call it the chicken of Trinidad. I'm like, I'm good. I believe you.
Exactly. So, man, you're doing a lot with podcasts, helping entrepreneurs. You're doing a lot of social media. You're the author of the book Social Media Sucks as well.
Yep.
And did some things. So why don't you talk about where'd you make the thing from being a social media marketer into kind of a podcaster? Why don't we talk about that and how the Seb Rusk Show came about?
Well, I kind of fell into it because I started a podcast right when I started my brand. Well, about a year after. Back in 2011, I started my show on Blog Talk Radio, if you remember that platform. And that was some innovative technology back then, but it was very unreliable. So I stuck with the show for about a year and a half, and then I quit, went on hold, didn't record anything, restarted the show again, and then finally committed to actually doing it consistently throughout the year. And as I did that, people would say, hey, listen, you have a podcast, don't you? And most of the people asking that question didn't even know what a podcast was. So in 2016, someone challenged me to say, hey, listen, why don't you create a solution that helps people go from, I want to start a podcast, to actually being able to start one. So hence the birth of the podcast Launch Lab that takes people from idea to iTunes. Well, so much more these days, but that was the initial concept on that. But the Seb Rusk Show, can I say my own show name? The Seb Rusk Show began in 2011 as an opportunity for me to be able to get in front of people that I looked up to as peers, people like Mari Smith and Jay Bear, and people that were crushing and still are crushing the social media space. And then later on, I would meet these individuals at live events that I would be emceeing or speaking alongside with them. So it was very easy to make these connections, and I wanted to learn from these people. And I think it's extremely rude to tell someone that you want to pick their brain. You wouldn't tell them you want to pick their nose, so why would you say I want to pick your brain? Well, the creative way of being able to pick somebody's brain is get them on your podcast or interview them and ask them strategic questions that extracts the information that you want to know, because if you want to know it, I'm sure everyone else does. So that I continued to rinse and repeat that process. And with social media, it wasn't just a, hey, Scott, can you introduce me to Bob? It was just write to Bob's profile and send a tweet or a message and be persistent and find out somebody who's on their team. And I learned that very, very early on with my buddy Gary Vaynerchuk, who is obviously everybody and their brother knows who Gary is now. But way back when, he was a wine guy that nobody knew about. Well, I strategically found a way to get within his circle way early on, some 11 years ago, and found out who his assistant was, a guy by the name of Phil Toronto at the time. And I contacted Phil and said, hey, Gary's coming to town for his Thank You Economy book tour. It's right around the corner from my house. I'd love to interview him. They got back to me last minute and said, Gary, I'd love to do it. Just meet him there like 30 minutes before the book signing. And I'm like, that's it? And they're like, yeah, that's it. And I had a film crew call me the day after that and say, hey, we want to work with you. Or you have any upcoming projects coming? So everything came together. I ended up spending about an hour with Gary and interviewing him. And once I've perfected that model of being able to connect with guys like Gary, I thought, why not continue to rinse and repeat that process and find people that are, and I say this for any person watching or any person that wants to start a podcast, after you've defined your why on starting a podcast, go after individuals that are smarter than you, cooler than you, richer than you, know more than you, have done more than you, and can take you places just by having a conversation with them. So, is that the right answer?
I love that. I'm not picking your brain. I'm scratching your head.
Yeah, no, you can't pick my brain. It's too expensive, I tell people. But if you want to pick people's brain, go ahead and interview them. By all means, the ego wins every single time. If I call you and say, Scott, I want to pick your brain about notes, you're like, go fly a kite, buddy. Well, you're a nice guy, so you might answer my question. But if I say, hey, Scott, I'd love to get you on the Seb Rusk Show to talk about how to buy and sell, notes. You're all over that. People are more inclined to have their ego stroke and allow them to talk about themselves than they are to have their brains picked. So I've started and restarted the Seb Rusk Show 3 times. That's actually the story of the podcast launch lab. Me being able to start and stop the Seb Rusk Show 3 times allowed me to understand what works, what doesn't work, what's realistic, being able to set realistic goals for myself to say, hey, listen, recording an episode every single day, completely unrealistic. Doing something once or twice a month, probably more realistic based on the context that I'm making, the people that I want to get on the show. But consistency is key, but that's the number one thing that that I believe any podcaster has a challenge with is being dare waste their time, and it's important. It's not just let's just interview everybody. No, let's be strategic. For instance, I think my buddy Jay Baer recommended this book, The Self-Reliant Entrepreneur, by the one and only John Jantsch. And I thought, I know John. I met good old duct tape Mark. Sure enough, went online, was already connected with John, met him in person one time for a half a minute. He probably wouldn't know me from days of the book there, which is Daily Entrepreneurs, and shared the story of how he actually spent a year writing the book. And I thought, well, that was cool. I just bought the book, and after buying the book, I got a hold of the author, got him on my show. And if you think that he's not going to share a podcast episode talking about a brand new book in the thick of a launch, you got another thing coming. So it's being strategic about finding out what makes sense. People say, what's your podcast about? My podcast is about extracting stories out of people that are cooler than me, smarter than me, richer than me, have done cooler things than me, and are light years ahead of where I'm at, so that I have an opportunity to not just pick their brain, but actually have an opportunity to build a relationship with them by talking about them and putting them on my spotlight.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Where do you see, let's bring it back a little bit, because I know you're so busy right now with your podcast launch lab as well. Where are you seeing, besides consistency, where are you seeing the biggest mistakes new podcasters are making, Sebastian?
Giving up and not sticking to it. I just had a meeting this morning. The guy gives me a 3-page description on what he wants pertaining to a podcast show. He wants to cover celebrity guests and cryptocurrency and the current state of cannabis and news and entertainment. And I said, listen, if you're a popular radio host that's syndicated nationwide and you have a popular morning show, you can talk about anything you want under the moon. Above and beyond that, you must, not you should, you must come up and define your why. Your why on why you're doing a podcast in the first place should be surrounded by the value of what your story is and what your truth is and what you want to share and bring to the table. I tell people constantly on a daily basis, if your goal is to start a podcast to make $1 million, you've already started off on the wrong foot. Monetizing a podcast, all part of the process in due time, but we're talking macro. Let's get consistent with recording episodes and getting strategic with our guests and watching the show grow and our marketing efforts grow. That in and of itself, as you know, Scott, is enough work to be able to say, hey, listen, I'm going to record, our launch solution is only the first 5 episodes. People are like, that's it? I'm like, that's it? Let's get through the first 5 and then we can reevaluate. That's it. And we spend 6 months getting those 5 episodes done. Now, to a podcaster like you're like, that sounds crazy. Stop being lazy. Get the episodes knocked out. But to the average Joe or Mary or whoever, that's realistic because it's something where, A, it's a learning curve. I need to take my idea and actually make it a reality. There's going to be roles and responsibilities on both sides for getting the show off the ground. But then it all comes down to, and I hate the phrase at the end of the day, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to recording the actual episode. As my buddy Brian Fanso would say, pressing the damn button. And that's a challenge in and of itself. But yeah, I decided late last year, as if everything wasn't crazy enough, with setting a goal of saying we're going to help 100 people start a podcast in 2020. I said, you know what? The podcast launch lab needs to be an actual place. It needs to be a place people can go to. It needs to be a place where I can record the Seb Rusk Show. People can utilize the space and just a creative space that people understand that we're the obvious and go-to source when it comes to podcast ideas becoming a reality. So yeah, I get the keys tomorrow. And when I say the keys, I mean a blank office full of Amazon boxes and equipment that I get to build and figure out, but it's all in my head.
That's awesome. Well, the thing is, too, I was kind of cracking up following you online. You've been working some construction. I thought you were building out a place.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We work construction, ladies and gentlemen. You know what? Well, first of all, it's for my best friend who's also my client and my attorney, and we go way back to high school. And it's all part of the same company. It's all part of, when I say company, I mean individuals. So his boss is the chairman of the Super Bowl, and also one of the largest lobbyists in Florida, and just a really, really powerful dude here in Miami, just a true Miami guy, born and raised. And he's buying an iconic restaurant that's on the water in a public park called Matheson Hammock Park that has a little lagoon and a little beach. It's right on the water and a marina, and it's called Redfish Grill. And Hurricane Irma came through in 2017 and did some serious damage to all the piping, all the electrical. I mean, it was barely salvageable, but the place is an icon. It was built in 1954, I believe, maybe 52, and it was a hot dog stand, and then it became a restaurant, and then eventually became Redfish Grill, and everyone just loved it. It's just a rooftop and great place to watch sunset. Well, anyway, they decided to buy it, and they said, we're going to get this thing open by the end of February. So when I say all hands on deck, literally it has been all hands on deck. So I was grabbing a broom and a wheelbarrow and like a chipping hammer, and like I couldn't move on Tuesday. Okay, let's put it that way. Construction, I don't know if it's for me, but I'm telling you right now, Scott, the ability to be able to, the first project was in this dark dungeon, like behind the kitchen. I was in the kitchen, but like dark, and it was covered in like 30-year like grease and dust and rocks, and like I was getting claustrophobia back there. And they're like, "Here's the broom, here's the bucket. Good luck. We'll see you at lunch." And it's like 9:00 in the morning. But I stopped and I shot a video, and I posted, and the title of it was "Doing the Work." And it allowed me to stop and think for a second, all the crazy jobs I've done over the course of my career over the past, 20 years. And now here we are. I'm doing what I love, doing what I'm passionate about, but at the same time, still willing to do whatever it takes to get to the next level. And sometimes that's grabbing a broom and a dustpan and working construction for the day and doing like real work. Not, I wrote a post called Top 15 Things You Learned by Doing Construction as soon as I got home, because it was just top of mind on here. But it gave me the opportunity to really think and digest and like get some downtime and free lunch,
Hey, free lunch is nothing wrong with that. Even if you got to use a chip and hammer for a little bit here and there.
My arms are like Jello. Then I barely pick up a microphone. I'm like, easy. I don't know if this is good for the career here. I got but it was good times. And I'm going back. Who am I kidding? But we're trying to get the place open by mid-February, which is extremely aggressive. So I'll be back out there. I may have to invest in some construction shoes, though. I totally ruined my gym shoes.
Yeah, I was hoping you're not wearing your Uggs out there.
I'll get beat up. It's a construction site. I will get beat up. Yeah.
So what's the best way for people to reach out to you? Because I'm sure you're working with people all across the country to help them get their podcast on. What's the best way for them to reach out to you, Sebastian, to help them take that next step to get their show on the road and get it going? You
can visit the podcastlaunchlab.com. Go to podcastlaunchlab.com. If you want a free guide that walks you through starting a podcast, you can get that there for free. And there's also an opportunity to schedule a call with a podcast strategist. Sometimes it's me, sometimes it's somebody on my team, but you can simply request to speak to me. I'll talk to anybody for 15 minutes about what their idea is and offer a free podcast strategy. You also feel free to drop me an email, which is srusk@podcastlaunchlab.com. And then my Instagram is Seb Rusk, SEBRUSK, just like my podcast. Feel free to follow me, shoot me a DM, and pin me down. I'd love to either tell you that you're absolutely out of your tree and your idea sucks, or you're onto something.
And also, too, if you were having a live event looking for a great master ceremony, Sebastian is a phenomenal guy as well, too, for that.
I've got a little bit of energy I can bring to an event.
Just a little bit.
A tiny tidbit.
There we go. Hey, well, Sebastian, thanks so much. Good luck, and congratulations on your goal for the year. So proud of you, man. Keep up the good work, and keep kicking ass and taking names, brother.
Wait, one more thing I want everybody to know. Podcasts suck if you don't have one.
Good stuff, guys. We'll see you later.
Happy New Year. Can you still say that? Happy New Year.